This is Kimberly. She's going to share her experience, strength, and hope with us for about 20 minutes.
Hey guys, I'm Kimberly. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Kimberly.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to say. Welcome to the newcomers. Experience, strength, and hope. Okay, so I woke up this morning and I realized I was sick, so I'm just going to sip on my Theraflu here and try not to die in a coughing fit. So, I was sitting here, I was talking to Jess, and I was telling her how, I moved in sobriety over time, and I got sober in Washington. So I got sober in Washington, and I had that cohort of people where it's you get sober with, and you start to see their lives change, and people with their 1-year birthdays and their 2-year birthdays and all of that. And then eventually I ended up moving to California, and I started to feel like I never found that home again with that core group of people where it was really on that journey together. And I had lived in Alameda for 3 years, and then I moved to San Ramon, and I was in San Ramon for 5 years, and now I'm in Lafayette. I've been there for a year, and it's now I'd never even been to meetings in Walnut Creek, so it's new. And so I don't know, maybe I'm a hermit or something, but what I was telling her though is how it's always been this piece of trying to find my home back in AA after I've been out of disconnected from that original core group. And I was sitting here and I was thinking about how egocentric it is for me to be so concerned about me and my long-term sobriety and not having this feeling in sobriety where there's all these new people sitting around in a room of 100 people who don't know anyone. And I was fuck. What about, imagine what the newcomer feels like. I'm so in ego. So it's good. It's good for me to have those reminders and, be humble and, remember, more of what's important. So I got sober in Washington, like I had said. I was 16 years old. I only drank for 3.5 years. But like it says in the big book, it talks about, women are often gone beyond recall within a short period of time. And so I started drinking when I was 13 years old, and by the time I was 16, I was a blackout late-stage alcoholic. I literally drank to get drunk, and I drank because I liked the effects of alcohol. And then I had this allergy of the body, right? I drank and I couldn't control my drinking. And I only would try to control my drinking if I thought I really, really had to, but I really didn't. I set out to drink. And when I... at some point, I no longer had control over my choices. I had boundaries when I first started drinking. I was well, I'm just going to drink and smoke some weed. And then it was well, I'm just going to drink and maybe, but I would never do coke. I had this list of things that I would never do. And what ended up happening is as my disease progressed in such a short amount of time, my disease progressed and decided, actually, you will do coke. Actually, what's free today? Actually, maybe you're gonna get drunk and do a bunch of pills and snort some E, and you don't have boundaries anymore, because really all I wanted to do is have more. And I had the disease of more at a very young age, and it landed me in some pretty severe consequences. When I was, I was probably 16, I don't know. I got sober when I was 16, so I was probably 15. I don't know. It's such a blur. I found myself arrested again, facing felony charges for identity theft and forgery, and I had, finally made it in with the tweakers that I had strived to, and that was the result of my will. So that's where I ended up, and I remember being in a jail cell with a policeman looking down on me like I was nothing, and I hated him for that, because I was fuck you, don't judge me, this whole, whatever the spiel is, and, but really I hated myself, and I sat there in that jail cell, and I cried, and I was so embarrassed, and I knew it was just one more thing that my family had to hide about me, which is one more thing that they didn't want to tell people that had happened, and it just, added to the list, and it was and at that point, that wasn't even my bottom. They're I didn't get sober after that. I don't, it's a blur, and it happened a long time ago, and I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time on what it was like, because at the end of the day, what it was like is I drank and I couldn't control my drinking, and it landed me, in jails and institutions. And that's what they say with alcoholics, we're kind of destined for those jails, institutions, and death, and thankfully I haven't died. So, and I know I don't want to go back to jail, and I definitely don't want to go into any more institutions. So, I keep showing up for my sobriety. So, but what happened, my family finally had like an intervention, and they were like, it was just a shit show, you name it, like didn't come home, disappeared for months, like they didn't know where I was, wasn't going to school, wasn't going to graduate high school, like clearly wreckage. So finally they're like, we've had enough of not being able to control you. So our best solution is that you can go to rehab, or you can go to live with someone in Indiana. Like, we'll find a family member. And I was like literally weighing my options of like, what should I do? I don't know. And because really, I was an addict and an alcoholic, and I didn't really want to be sober. So somehow I agreed, and I went for my assessment. And for some reason, and this is God, right? By the grace of God, I sit down for this treatment assessment, and I didn't lie for the first time in years. I just told the truth. I don't know. I was just I guess somewhat willing to maybe get some help, because what was really going on is, I was sick of waking up inside, waking up in the morning and feeling like I was dying inside, and so lonely and so depressed and so ashamed and so filled with remorse that I just needed to scrape a pipe to try to make it through the morning and try to face life. I was really sick of myself, and I was getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so I show up to this assessment and tell them everything that I've done, right? And they're like, oh, you've smoked embalming fluid? Okay, so you get the next available bed, right? So I outpatient wasn't an option. They're like, you might die. I was like, oh, okay. So I packed my little bag for rehab, and off I go. And I'd always been so proud that out of all my friends, I was the one that hadn't been to rehab yet. But what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is yet stands for you're eligible too. And so I was still eligible to go to rehab. I just hadn't gone yet. And I went, and it was so hard. It was so hard to deal with my emotions and live in myself and not be loaded. And I had to face my wreckage for the very first time. I couldn't get loaded and drink away the pain of screwing over everybody that loved me, and disappointing them and letting them down and stealing shit and everything that I had done. I couldn't numb it anymore. And so I was in treatment, and it was just I'm so sad. I was just crying. It was so emotional. And for the first year of sobriety, I mean, it was really, really intense. But what happened is I didn't know. It wasn't a conscious decision. I wasn't consciously hey, I'm going to fix myself. But somehow I became as willing as the dying could be. I became as willing as the dying could be, drowning in an ocean, and someone throws you a life preserver, and you say, I'm going to grab onto this because it's all I have. And I kept coming back. So I go to treatment. I'm 16. It's 2002 at that time. I go loaded the day. So my sobriety day is the next day, which is November 18th, 2002. So next month I'll have 17 years sober, so, if it happens. And so I go to treatment, and they give me this big book, which I guess today they're $11. I don't know what the cost is, but mine was $11,000. And so it's if you haven't gone to treatment, all they're going to do is give you a really expensive big book. Don't have that be oh, well, I haven't really gone to treatment yet, so no, they're just going to send you to AA with the same book, and it's going to cost more. So it's not a stepping stone, a requirement to get here. It's great if you don't have to do that. And if you do, that's how I got here, so great. But what's the point? They told me to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. They ingrained into me the first step in my powerlessness over alcoholism. And I went to one of my friends that I had gotten loaded with all through school. He picked me up because he was sober, and he's like, you want to go to a meeting? And I was like, I have nowhere else to go, so let's go. And he takes me to this young people's meeting in Burien, Washington, which is south of Seattle by the airport. And I go into this little log cabin, and I was hella insecure, and I was just fuck all these people, and she's a bitch, and whatever. And just all my defenses were up, and not feeling good enough, and I don't belong, and all this stuff. And that became my home, and that became that home that I missed when I moved. And I ended up slowly trudging into sobriety. And so what it's been like is life happens, and I've had to learn to live life on life's terms in a way that, like, when growing up in AA, like, I didn't mean like I grew up as like a child going to meetings. That wasn't part of my story. I literally grew up into adulthood in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had to graduate high school sober. Like, I got sober my junior year of high school, had to figure out how to graduate high school because I was not on track to do so. And I had to figure out how to go to college because no one was going to help me do that. That's just not the kind of family that I came from. And I got myself through college, and I got myself through my 20s, and got my, turned 21 in sobriety, and found people that, love music just like I did, and Red Bull, and would go out to the club and be like, whatever, I'm fucking sober, and and like lived life. I learned how to live life on life's terms, but not in a bubble of all these things I can't do, right? Like, people I know are gonna get married. Like, I need to figure out how to suit up and show up and go to weddings and be around people that can drink. Because their drinking's none of my business. Yeah. My drinking's my business. But I had definitely learned that in some awkward shit, in early sobriety, like trying to, like, I don't know, not mind my own business, and made it really awkward. So eventually I learned boundaries on how to, like, I don't like just tell people I'm in AA today. Like, I don't have to do that. I don't have to, like, blurt shit out and make the room uncomfortable. Thankfully, that's, like, I grew some. So today, like, so this morning, fast forward, like, what was it like today? So by the grace of God, I graduate high school. I get myself through college, a 4-year degree that took me hella long to get because I had to work. I worked full time. I worked full time and took some time off and did whatever I had to do. But eventually, I graduated, and I had transferred down here, and I went to Cal State and graduated from Cal State East Bay. And today, I was sitting. I felt hella sick this morning. I was just, like, sitting on my couch, drinking coffee, and I was writing my personal statement to apply to St. Mary's MBA program that I've decided that that's what I want to do. And I was able to, like, objectively look at just how far I've fucking come. And I'm really, really grateful. I'm really grateful for that. And so I was sitting down trying to articulate, like, something in 600 words or less. And that doesn't really matter, but it was good. It was soul-filling, and I was proud of what I came up with for my first draft. But back to this kind of, like, it's like showing up for life. I've had to continuously show up for life on life's terms, and I basically was it's like, I heard the term a long time ago. They say grow or go. And I was like, oh, right, because there's going to be situations in life where I don't like it and it's hella uncomfortable. And if I can't grow through that discomfort and emotional sobriety, I'm going to drink. Because what happens is drinking was but a symptom. Alcohol is removed from my life. Like, I'm not, like, just trying to not drink for today. Like, what ended up happening for me is it was like, I'm just trying to be emotionally present and available through family members dying. I'm just trying to be emotionally present and available through uncomfortable situations because human interaction happens, just different things where it's like, I just had to suit up and show up and push myself through growth in a way that, I wouldn't have been able to do drinking. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And so my biggest journey in the last 2.5 years was, so I didn't really talk about my family because it's like, my family isn't the reason that I'm alcoholic, right? Like, all the lineage of all how drunk they were and all that, like, that's their drinking. Like, I had, I was I had a predisposition to possibly be alcoholic, but I just was, and what happened is, I had that allergic reaction where I drank and I couldn't stop drinking, and that mental obsession, and it happened to me that I was alcoholic too. But I had, of my family of origin, my grandma was my most influential person in my life, and she was the strongest rock that I had. And in 2016, she died, and I had to watch her die on hospice. I didn't have to, but I wanted to be there, and I had to make that choice. I had to call people and say, do I want the memory of watching somebody die? What's the repercussion of that? What's the repercussion if I don't, right? Like, what do I do? How do I show up? How do I show up to a house where other people don't have emotional tools and they're losing their shit, and it's chaotic, and everyone's trying to control the fucking situation, and where's this, and where's that, and it's like, fuck, dude, like, grandma, like, who cares? And it's like, but then, like, somehow, because I had, like, showed up in the program and, like, practiced and like, filled my little spiritual bank account and all that stuff, and I was able to intuitively handle a situation that would have baffled me. And it's like, as I've had to face these challenging things on life's terms, like, by the grace of God, I've intuitively handled situations which used to baffle me and showed up with grace and dignity, and got outside of myself and know that, like, I'm not going to take that personal. I'm not going to go into codependent mode. I'm here to be of service so that my grandma knows that she was loved unconditionally by me, and I'm here for her, and she deserves that. And you know, after I had hella weird dreams after that. Like, it was not easy. You know, watching somebody die is not easy, and I had weird dreams after that, and I had to process all of that. Then the next year, I'm like, fast forward, I'm pregnant with my second child, and my mom died unexpectedly. And so I get this call, like the call you never want. I'm like crying in my driveway, like, fuck, you know, like my 2-year-old's there, and it was a mess. And by the grace of God, like, I have health insurance, and I got a really good grief counselor, and I've showed up to grief counseling at least once a week for 2.5 years. Often twice a week. Like, thank God I got to go to therapy for twice a week for the last 2.5 years, because what happened is it turned out I had hella family of origin issues. And by the grace of God, I've gotten to work through a lot of that. And, you know, I feel like what I shared in the meeting last night was that I fully believe that God's will is everything or it's nothing. And for me, how I relate to that is that I'm not going to say specifically that God's will was for someone to die, but what I know is that God's will for me, like, I'm living in God's will today as the best version of myself, and I happen to be the best version of myself because of the chain of events that happened, pushing me into, like, the therapy path that I went into to grow and, like, be relieved from the bondage of self that was on such a deep level. I needed outside help. You know, because I call it, like, introductory AA. Like, the first time I do, like, my steps, it's, like, mind-blowing to even realize I have a part in shit. What? I have a part, right? But it's, like, the longer I stay sober, and it's, like emotional sobriety and, like, really digging into life, and where this onion and the layers are revealed, it gets deeper and deeper, and it's like, oh, it's not that I just had a part. It's that I had, like, a scar that, like, childhood little Kimberly got her feelings hurt when she was 6 by this type of person who coincidentally continues to show up on my 4th step. Like, oh, interesting that it's not really about them. Because you take away them and the same resentment keeps showing up year after year, right? It's like actually a certain type of figure who I associate with all my little, like, hurt. And, you know, I'm resentful. I'm the one that, like, needs to heal from that. And until I can heal from, like, that deep defective character, is that defective character not going to be there anymore? Because that's what I've really learned about, like, walking through the steps and, like, doing a 4th step, and that whole piece of resentment is it's not about them. Like, they are a vessel of my perception of something that I'm deciding is not right. Right, and it talks about it in 417 in the big book. It talks about, you know, acceptance is the answer to all our problems today, because when I'm disturbed, something's not right. Like, something's not right. I don't know. It's too many people looking at me to quote that. But, like, you know, when it gets deeper and deeper, it's like I've been able to really, like, dive into, like, deep-rooted understanding of, like, my defects of character and where they really stem from, so that, you know, if I can rework my beliefs that was kind of formed around that type of a personality that hurt me, where I started to be defensive, where I started to be fearful, you know, fearful of, you know, losing something I already have or not getting something that I want. I'm not going to carry that baggage into continual situations in life, and, like, I don't have the length of a 4th step that I would have had with all those other people. And so it's just amazing that more is revealed if we want it to be revealed. And what I've really found is, like, if the student's ready, the teacher will appear. I never know who the teacher is going to be, but if I'm willing and if I'm open to, like, to look at myself in the most honest way I can, I'm gonna have more revealed, and it's gonna get deeper, and I'm going to it's uncomfortable as shit, right? It sucks. Like who wants to be rigorously honest, right? Who wants to be like, hey, I'm kind of an asshole to these types of people, right? Like not, you don't really want to like say that, but the benefit is if I'm willing to show up and like be honest about that and look at myself and truly look at my part and maybe when that part started and all that stuff. I get to grow. I get to grow or go, you know, because what am I going to do in long-term sobriety? Just sit around and be the exact same fucking person for the next 10 years? I don't think so. You know, that's not, no. So, just going to keep showing up and use my tools and work on all my outside issues. Because at the end of the day, it all snowballs together in like how I actually live the program in my life, like living life on life's terms, like one day at a time. And like, can I actually like practice these principles in all my affairs? You know, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But I know that if I like keep digging in and keep trying, it's like more is always going to be revealed, and it's super beautiful. So thanks for listening. That's all I have.
All right, we will now